I get to get up here and tell y'all what I think. This is what you're doing wrong right here. Just kidding. Trust me, it'll take a while. Anyway, Katie and I, we went on a mission trip to Honduras with New Haven Baptist Church, which was it was really exciting, especially to see another church involved in missions, because not a lot of churches around here do it, as you guys know. So it was they're fired up for it. So it's really good to kind of join hands with them, and we did a lot of stuff. Let me pull my notes out here. We did a lot of stuff for the people who are really poor there. I mean, extreme poverty, and I'll get into that a little bit. But I mean, their pastor he mentioned to keep the main thing. He said a lot, and that was we were getting the gospel out more than anything. And so I'll just kind of get into it. We flew down there on Thursday, I guess, of last week, and just driving in it's a culture shock. Just seeing the town and the city, and it's just a lot different than America. And you know you see these slides that they do at the missions conference, and I've 1,000 missionaries have been through here. I've seen every one of them my entire life, and it's. You have a heart for them. I mean, you see the videos of the kids and the people that are, Catholics and everything else that they have. They're lost, and I don't know, sitting on the pew, you have a heart for them, but then you go on with your life. And until you really get there, and I'm sure anyone that's been on a mission trip, or Brother Allen or anyone that's a missionary can tell you, it's a different perspective that you have coming out of that. Well, anyway, we got there, and there's this little kid named Dax. There's a missionary. Okay, I'll start with this. There's a missionary named Stan Noel, and he started this ministry down there 22 years ago. And they have a home for orphan kids, and there's another missionary couple that runs the day-to-day stuff now, and he kind of brings in missionary teams and that do mission trips and stuff. And so we get there, and there's this little kid. The kids kind of come out. We start playing with him. There's this kid named Dax, and he just clings to Katie right off the bat. And I mean, he doesn't speak English. And there's a language barrier, but he just hangs all over, and he just clicks to her. And later that evening, we have a little devotional, and Stan's telling us some stories. He's giving us the rundown of the place. He's like, most of these kids come from pretty rough backgrounds. They've been abandoned, and most of them have been abused in more ways than you can even wrap your head around. And he gave us a little bit of those stories. I'll spare you the details, but it's heartbreaking. And he goes in detail. He said there's this one kid, he said, we picked up 6 months ago. The military found him wandering the streets. He's 10 years old. And they picked him up. He didn't even know his own name. Didn't know where he was from. Didn't know anything. And he said that kid's, we found out through fingerprints and DNA testing, we found out his name was Daxler. And he said we call him Dax. And Katie had already been connected to him. And it breaks your heart, man. It's... You look at our kids, how they grow up, and she said, this kid doesn't even know he didn't even know his own name. And it's really heartbreaking, and you just realize how big the world is and how many people are there, and how the world doesn't revolve around Scott County, Tennessee. And anyway, there's one story I like to tell, that there's this kid named Alan, and he is a little turd, man. I'm telling you. But you love him, and he's a good, you like him, but I get out there, and there's a mango tree, and we're throwing rocks up, knocking these mangoes out so we can eat them. And he grabs this ball, and he's motioning me over, come here, and there's these other coconut trees across the farm there. So we're throwing them, he's trying to get me to throw them up there. I just think he wants a coconut. And so then there's a couple trees, so we all kind of start focusing on this one. There's a coconut it looks like we can get, and we're throwing it, and he keeps saying, no, over here. And I'm like, I don't know why he wants me to throw that one. So I start throwing it, and next thing I know, I hear someone say bees. And about that time, I get about stung in the neck about 3 times. And that kid is rolling, laughing at me. And I'm like, you little... And I tell the missionaries about the story. And I said, I think he knew what he was doing. He said, who was it? I said, Alan. He goes, 100% he knew what he was doing. He goes, that kid, he goes, the Honduran government won't let us spank these kids. But if there's one kid that I could, it'd be that one right there. And, and then the Dax, and there's another kid named Carlos that... They just cling to Katie and her sister, and when they would come eat breakfast, Dax and Carlos and Alan would be separated from everyone else because they'd get in trouble all the time. And it's just funny, man. And you really fall in love with the kids, and that from the day one. I mean, even the older kids. And anyway, so the next day, 2 days, we went into they call the dump, and these people literally live in the dump. I mean, I'm not saying, and I remember I've heard Brother Dilbert talk about going to China and seeing these little kids run out from the dumpsters and stuff, and him saying if God would let me go, I'd be there right now. And I mean, I never really understood. I mean, I understood it, but at the same time, I'm thinking, man, I don't want to leave America. You know, we got pretty. I mean, I get it, but you know, but when seeing it, I understand where that heart comes from. And anyway, we go into this dump. We go into the dumps, and we get there, and these people live in the dump or on like dump adjacent, I guess, on the side of this hill, and that they build these homes out of stuff they find in the dump. And the reason they do is because there's no jobs, and they have to scrounge through the dump and just try to recycle plastic and whatever they can do to make a little bit of money to buy food. And everyone we talk to, they're like, pray that I can find a job, pray that I can find a job. And I mean, that's just the reality of the way they live. And it's heartbreaking. But anyway, we get in there, and we our team that came with us, we spent like some money and just bought a bunch of food, like rice and beans, and the ladies packed all these little just little bags and stuff of clothes and things, and some of you guys donated dresses and stuff that we gave them, so I thank you for that. And the ladies were really good about that, because if it would have been just a man, it would have been bad. But they're awesome with it. And we got in there and we got to talk to a few people, and we split up into 4 teams, and there was only 4 or 5 men. So he asked me if I could lead a team, and I said yeah, I don't care too. And we get in there and we give the first lady the gospel, and some of them had been saved from previous people that had come in here, and most of them were Catholic. Most of them were. And we talked to them about, you know, I asked them how they get into heaven, and it's, if I'm a good person, and I have a translator there, and I'm trying to explain to them, you know, it's not by works, and sometimes they'll just agree with you. Yeah, we know it's not by works, and then sometimes, you know, it's just whatever, they just kind of agree with you, but they are really desperate. And one thing that's just I've noticed when I was there is that they just don't have any pride. I mean, they don't have any pride that Americans have in a good way. I'm not saying bad. Like they're very humble. I mean, I was just sitting there thinking, man, if somebody brought me some rice and beans to my house, I'd be like, thanks, bro. Like, I mean, I appreciate it, but you know, you'd be taken back, like offended, like you think I can't buy my own stuff. And these people are so desperate that they come out of the house, they come in, sit down, you know, they're so grateful for that these strangers from 500,000 miles away are just bringing them some rice and beans. And they're just so grateful for it, and they listen to, I mean, they hang on every word you tell them. And we go through a few houses, and went to this one guy named Johnny, and he said he was saved, and I kind of gave him some of the gospel, and he said he had a salvation testimony. And I asked him what he wanted, and he said, can I have some drinking water? He said, I don't. And he had like 5 buckets of just crappy old water that had drained off his roof. And so we got him some water the next day, and all this stuff, and it's just makes you really look at what you take for granted. And we talked to a few people and get to the very last house before we were about to leave. And there was a lady. We walked in, and she had a 3-week-old baby in her arms, and had an outdoor stove that she had food cooking on that she made out of clay, had built out of clay, and a dirt floor. And she's sitting there with this 3-week-old in her arms, and we give her some stuff, and I just start talking to her, and God really used it, because there were a few translators there, and the translator we got, his name was Leo, and he was just really good, and it was a little awkward for me at first, because it's not English. You're trying to talk to him through Spanish and translate, and it's just kind of awkward, and he was just really good, man, and he's really, really smooth, and was able to make it really comfortable for me. And I started talking to that lady and asked her if she knew if she was going to heaven, and she said, well, I think if I'm a good person, I think I'll go to heaven. And I said, why do you think that? Like, what makes you think that? And she said, I don't know, I guess I just kind of think that's a good thing. And I said, well, the Bible says differently. And I went through and gave her the scriptures, and I just kept kind of repeating myself, because I just didn't want her to just agree with me because we were giving her some food, you know. And I said, and I'm not going to force you to get saved. I said, but if you want to get saved, there's no reason you can't do it right here. And she said, blah, 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 blah. And she knelt down or covered, you know, bowed down right there with 3 weeks old in her arms and got saved. And it was something I've never been a part of, and it was pretty awesome. And it was I said, you can repeat after me, not thinking. And she was like, so then I would say, she said, so I would pray something, and then he would translate, and then she would do it. And it was like it took a while to get through the prayer, but I lost my train of thought a couple times. I repeated myself and get halfway through a sentence and then start something else. But it was good. And I had a couple things down here I was going to share with you. And then there's one other lady I would want to mention. Her name was Melissa. She was a translator. And Katie got to tell my family her testimony. And I'm telling you, it's the greatest story I've ever heard in my entire life, and I'm not exaggerating. It could be a movie. If you guys want to hear it, it would be a different time because it takes a while. But she was sold into human trafficking when she was a little girl at 6 years old. And anyway, long story short, she got into this area and started praying and said, God, all these people talk about you. Like, where are you at? Like, you're this God that everyone talks about, and I've never seen you. And later that night, her sister, who was also in it, a detective, had got in that human trafficking ring. This is 2003 or something, and they came in and they saved her that night right before they were getting ready to harvest her human organs, literally. And then there's a whole other part of it, but she talks about she met the girl, the lady which was like her half sister that sold her into that thing. That lady ended up messaging her and saying, hey, my daughter needs help. She needs brain surgery, and you're the only relative of her that can sign on this thing. And she was talking about how I was like, forget you, man, like what you did. And God convicted her, and she signed on that thing, and her niece ended up coming out of it and out of that brain surgery. And she's like, why in the world would you help me? And she just was able to give her testimony and just talk about what God did for her. And there's a whole lot to that story. But it's humbling and amazing. And it just makes you really take for granted. And Katie was preaching at me at the airport a little bit. We got back to Miami. We were coming back, and we finally got some American food. The food was good, but after a week, I wanted a cheeseburger, And so we got down, and we were eating at this cheeseburger joint in the Miami airport, and I wanted a milkshake. And I was like, I want a milkshake, an American milkshake. And so she's like, well, let's go see what they have. So we walk around, and they don't have one. So then we come back to the other place, and they're like, oh, we ran out of ice cream. So then I'm mad. I'm like, man, ice cream. So then we go to TGI Fridays, and I'm like, I'll just get this brownie. I guess I'll have to settle for that. And we sit there for 30 minutes, and no one comes to our table. So then I get mad. I'm like, man, forget this. And I get up, and I leave. And then Katie goes, Stephen, we just seen all those kids down there and don't have nothing. And I thought, golly, woman. I wanted to say, well, that's different. But I was like, oh, you're right. I was like, man. And then the Lord's Chicken came through. We found a Chick-fil-A, and I got me a chocolate milkshake. So that was good. And just thank for everyone who was praying and everyone who gave us dresses and clothes and everything. And if you ever get to go on a mission trip, or you want to go on that one next year with us, we're going back. You should do it. It'll change your perspective, and it changed my life. It really did. Thank you.
Sounds good, brother. Praise the Lord. Good for you. Good for us. Amen. All right, let's